Okay, time to talk about Moda. So this is the paired video for the Ace cover page series, Ace's Great Blackbeard Search. Moda is one of the characters that is introduced in that cover page series, and so she's kind of my favorite out of the ones that got introduced to there, so I figured she would be the best one for me to do this video about. Also, she's kind of this representation of just like an everyday person in the One Piece world, and kind of where that has led her. So, yeah. So, basic information. Moda is a milk maiden from the Lelucia Kingdom, and she is the daughter of Koda and Kyuji. Those are her parents. They work at the Marine Base G2. We'll get to that in a moment, or at least they did. We do not know Moda's age, although I would say that she is at least a teenager, probably younger than Rebecca and Shirahoshi. Maybe she's like 14, 15-ish years old. I don't think she's quite as old as them. But she might be, because like we meet her about 2 years ago before the time skip, during Ace's cover story, and I'd say she's probably around like 12, 13-ish range there, so roughly that age. But Oda's a little inconsistent for how he draws, young kids. So, I just kind of figured she's definitely older than Rika and the others, the other bunch of the other kids that the Straw Hats end up meeting. But I figured this about teenager-ish, mid-teenager, give or take. For her powers and abilities, to be fair, this is pumped up with Bello Betty's pump fruit. But she is able to defeat a pirate, Peachbeard, who is worth 52 million berries. Which, it was one hit with a stick. Which I'm like, okay, that's fairly impressive for a young girl. That's probably better than I could do, but good girl. She's got those cow tending arms that she's got ripped, and she's shredded in that regard. So, into her history. As I said, we don't know exactly when she was born, roughly between 14 and 15 years ago, I would assume. She has lived on the Lelucia Kingdom her whole life, to the best of our knowledge, and she has a dairy farm there. Assumedly, her parents used to run the dairy farm, or possibly her grandparents, depending on certain circumstances, used to run the dairy farm. And then at some point in time, probably in order to make a little more money, because we find out much later that Lelucia is... I'm covered in dog hair. I'm sorry. And it keeps bothering me. Dog hair, my hair, shedding all over the place. I love you, Chip, but you shed a lot. That was my hair. He sheds a lot too. I have blankets covered in his fur. But we know that Lelucia is a very poor kingdom, because of the way that King Seki and Princess Komane treat it as just they get all the money, and then anything that needs to go to the Heavenly Tribute goes to the Heavenly Tribute, and then everything else just goes to them. So they very heavily tax their people. So they're one of the countries that very much needs to be liberated under the oppressive way that rulers are. And what ends up happening is, assumedly, eventually at some point her parents have to go and end up working as chefs at the Marine Base G2, which is probably not super far from where they live. This also means that they're not able to be around her as much, because they don't get the chance to come and visit her very often. So that's kind of one of the problems. Then we get to 2 years ago in the story, where we get introduced to her during Ace's cover page series. For her, this is entirely random. One day she is just out. It looks like she's like doing laundry, and doing laundry in the river, and just Ace just comes floating down the river. It's just like knocked out Ace just comes floating down the river. And, this is a half-drowned Ace that has been chucked in the river by the citizens of Lelucia, however far back in the city, after he dined and dashed and then punched or kicked attacked one of their doctors that looked like Blackbeard. And what ends up happening is Moda fishes him out of the water, and she is able to prevent, she possibly does like CPR on him or whatever, and then she gets him back to her house, and he eventually recovers and wakes up and everything from his near drowning. And he wakes up and he's very thankful to her. He, is very grateful to her. And she ends up asking him, "Hey, I know that I helped you. Can you kind of repay me?" And he's like, "Sure, what do you need?" And she's like, "Well, my can you deliver this letter to me to my, deliver this letter for me?" And he's like, "Sure, why the heck not?" It's, she saved his life. The least he can do is, in Ace's mind, the least he can do is deliver a letter for her. And he's like, "Sure." So, he's all better and he heads out. And this ties all into the cover page series. He ends up at the G2 base because that's where he has to take the letter anyway. Ace technically meets both of Moda's parents, doesn't know that they're her parents, doesn't ever find out that they're her parents either. Goes into disguise as Marine, ends up making his way to being near Comiel, who he has to give the letter to anyway, ends up saving another Marine's life from a burning ship, steals intel, delivers Moda's letter to Comiel, and then skedaddles. So essentially what ends up happening is Moda gives him the letter. He does complete the promise. He delivers the letter to Comiel, who opens the letter and finds out that, oh, she's a little girl and she's selling milk. Moda's parents probably, recognize her handwriting and her picture and everything and be like, "Hey, that's our daughter." And Comiel's like, "She sells milk." "Yes. That'll work great to fix this horrible coffee we have. Go, 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 go. Go get the milk. Go get the milk. Play whatever you have to get the milk. This coffee is horrible." So they get to go back home and visit Moda real quick. And they are able to, they're able to then buy the milk from Moda, so that helps their family farm. They are then able to see their daughter whenever they have to come and get the milk to then take back to the Marine base and use in the canteen and for the coffee and everything at the Marine base. So that just makes everything so much better at the Marine base. So now they have much better coffee. So the morale at the morale at G2 is soaring because of a little girl who fished a pirate out of a river, and then he was nice enough to deliver her letter. The thing is that I don't think Moda had any idea who Ace was. She just pulled him out of the river, helped him, had no idea that he was a pirate, or most likely had no idea that he was a pirate. Probably found out later when everything was being broadcast for Ace's execution and all the information came out, when it would come out that he'd been captured and everything. Moda probably saw that and was just like, that's the guy that delivered my letter. And like her parents and Comiel are like, "That's the guy that that gave us the thing for the milk." I mean, Comiel figured out that it was Ace anyway, but like her parents are like, "That's the guy that delivered Moda's letter about the milk." And they're like, "That's weird." Probably like, oh my god, Moda was probably sad when Ace died. I mean, it's not like she knew him very well, but she kind of is one of the things that leads to his downfall to a degree, but not intentionally. And, Ace helped her. Ace would have gotten information about where Blackbeard was regardless of whether or not Moda helped it. Moda, whether or not he ended up at G2 to deliver the letter anyway, he would have still ended up finding information about Blackbeard. But, Moda was probably sad when she found out about that. But then we cut ahead about 2 years. She spends the next 2 years growing up a bit more, dealing with living in the Lucia Kingdom. We're not exactly sure if conditions just kind of steadily get worse because of the overtaxation, or if it's just kind of no, they're kind of always this way. We kind of learn to deal with it after a while. But eventually we get to during the revelry. During this time frame, her parents have probably been coming in and visited every now and then to get the milk and everything else like that to keep the morale better at the base. But Moda probably had the thought of, well, Ace helped me and he was a pirate. Maybe not all pirates are bad. That would be a very interesting thing because we'll get to it later, but like, because of where Moda currently is in the story as of the recording of this video. But we get to the reverie, and like Comil and or not Comil, Seki and Comain are off at the reverie and everything, and Lelucia ends up getting attacked by the Peachbeard pirates, or at least by Peachbeard and his crew. I think they're the Peachbeard pirates, but they get attacked by his crew, by Peachbeard, and we see Moda running around, and this is where we get the reveal that, oh, that's Moda, that's the girl that Ace helped, and she lives in Lelucia. Okay, well, I guess now we know where that is, or at the very least, well, I guess we know where the Aces cover page series took place now, which is fun information to have. And Moda is specifically being chased around by Peachbeard. She's the one that we get focused on because she's like the only person here that we know in the kingdom for the most part. And, he's, telling her to give him the money and everything else like that. And the only money that they possess goes to the world nobles as the offering because of how heavily taxed they're. Did you bring a duck? You have a duck. Chip, you have a duck. He's like, I have a duck, and now I have a window. I'm going to stare out the window with my duck. And what ends up happening is, Peachbeard is chasing her. She is like, we see her holding on to like a jar of milk. Sure. And she gets struck down. And as, like he's demanding for her to hand over like their valuables. And she gets struck down, but she's caught by Bello Betty. Caught by Bello Betty's boobs. We'll put it that way. Bello Betty then proceeds to use her pump fruit, the Kubu Kubu no Mi, in order to motivate the citizens, to pump them up, to give them, this motivation, give them, a huge morale boost. And, and they then attack Peachbeard. Moda is the one who picks up a stick and using this newfound strength, bam, bashes Whitebeard in the face and takes him out. So that's what happens there. And, Bello Betty leaves the contact information with them for the Revolutionary Army in case they decide that they want to join in. And, that kind of comes to fruition. So then we cut ahead to during Egghead, where we finally get a bunch of this revealed. And first what we end up seeing is we get the reveal that Sabo is alive. We kind of all figured he was, but now we get the confirmation here that he was alive after escaping Reverie. And he ends up calling Kamabaka Kingdom in order to talk to Dragon and the others and tell them what happened. And Ace is there when Moda and the other citizens they're waiting at the port, and they capture King Seki and Princess Komain, and they lock them up after the reverie as they are rebelling against their king and his family and his tyrannical rule over them. From there, we know that they help Ace. They give him treatment and everything because he stowed away on the ship that ended up at the Lelucia Kingdom. They give him treatment. And they're like, please take us with you to join the revolution. We want to help. Take us to join the army. Moda is one of the ones that is on the ship leaving Lelucia when they watch their island, her home, get blown up. Now, it is not known whether her parents were on the island when that happened or whether they were at G2 when it happened. I really hope that they were not on the island when it happened and that they were at G2, because we see later, which we'll get to that in a moment, but we know G2 is still around because it was not on the island. It was a ways away from the island, but, Comil is kind of involved in that. Chip. And, we'll talk about Comil in a moment, but Moda is on the ship when they watch this happen. Is on the ship with Sabo and a bunch of the other citizens when they watch their home get destroyed by the sky weapon. And if having to deal with Peachbeard and then being part of a revolution on their own kingdom and then now watching their island get destroyed and then later finding out kind of what happened isn't enough to freaking motivate them to be in the Revolutionary Army, I'm not sure what would. Yeah. So, what ends up happening is, of course, they'll end up at Kamabaka. They, Sabo and the others, Sabo's ship shows up at Kamabaka Kingdom after they left, after they managed to escape Lelucia and saw the destruction. They end up at Kamabaka Kingdom. Moda and a bunch of the other citizens have, the only surviving citizens left from Lelucia have decided to join the Revolutionary Army, and they arrive there with Sabo on the ship. They can't really go home. And, they're there, they want to start training. They're also all in like mourning and such for their kingdom and for whatever family was still left, family and friends and stuff like that. Her cows were still on that island. Moda's cows were still on that island. So, they're like, we want to fight. Show us how to fight. Later, when we get to Vegapunk's message, when it's being broadcast worldwide and watched worldwide, Moda, along with the revolutionaries, are watching this message as it is being broadcast. And we see just like this shock of horror when, Vegapunk talks about the mother flame that was used in order to power the weapon that destroyed Lelucia. And she's just so sad, knowing kind of a vague idea of what had happened. And that like Vegapunk is kind of taking responsibility for it. I don't quite know if she would blame Vegapunk for what happened, but she, maybe she would. I don't know. I don't think Vegapunk would blame her if she did. But, her home is gone. All the citizens of Lelucia, their home is gone after they just managed to try to win it back against, Seki and Komain. So we're not sure what will happen with Moda next. We do know that there is tangential connection to G2 because of her parents, and Komil because Komil is aware of who Moda is because her parents work there and she's the one who kept supplying their milk. That was very helpful in their coffee. So if anything, Komil might just rebel against the world government and the Gorosei, the celestial dragons in Emu, simply because his coffee is bad again. It was a huge morale boost. It might just be because his coffee's bad again, and he might be like, you know what? This coffee's horrible now. I can't stand this. We're going to revolution, boys. You coming with me? Moda's parents, yes. All the other men that were there, yes. Let's go. I don't know. That would be funny. Don't think that's going to happen, but that would be very funny if that was the case. We don't know when we're going to see Moda again. Assumedly, a couple of other times if we cut back to Kamabaka or just other areas where we see the Revolutionary Army, either training their new forces, having Koala there help train them. Since it is known that Sabo is a sworn brother of Luffy, because that's very much promoted with the fact that he's the Flame Emperor and he's the brother of newest Yonko, Luffy, Monkey D. Luffy and everything. It would be very interesting. I also kind of want to know if Dr. Blackbeard, that had been the doctor on Lelucia that Ace punched and Ace attacked in his cover story. I kind of want to know if he's still alive, if he survived. I kind of want to know whether or not he survived. That'll be interesting if that's the case. But that would be, again, something that can tie back into Blackbeard and maybe the connection to Eris and the connection to her telling Rocks that her and Teach would be on Lelucia, that will, reunite at Lelucia or something like that. Maybe there's a connection there. Don't know. But what we may end up having is, Moda, next time we see her, she could be training. We could also see her have a conversation with Sabo where she tells him, I actually met your brother. I met Ace a couple of years ago. He, tells Sabo what happened. And maybe that's just like a nice little conversation for them to have. Again, does not need to be something that is in the story, but it would be nice to see like the two of them talking. That would be cute. Or that would be like an interesting SBS question of like, hey, Oda, did Moda ever have a conversation with Sabo about the fact that she met Ace and like had this connection to him, this little connection to him? But so that's kind of, kind of one of the questions there that I would have. I have a whole list of questions I wouldn't mind sending to Oda. Probably wouldn't get any of them actually answered because they're not about boobs or other things, but maybe. Um, but I would kind of fall under the concept for Moda of, as I mentioned at the beginning, she is kind of this representation of a fairly average citizen in the One Piece world. She was not a pirate. She was not a revolutionary. She was not a marine. She was just a little girl, young girl who lived on the Lucia, was tending to her cattle that made really good milk, and she needed a way to help make money because her kingdom overtaxed them. So she needed a way to make money. Thought, well, my parents work at the Marine base. Maybe if I send them a letter about getting milk and stuff like that, maybe that would be a good way to A, see my mom and dad again, B, be able to have like some type of an income that I can use to help pay my taxes that have to go to the Celestial Tribute and everything. And, and then she meets Ace, doesn't really know who he is, but he, she saved him. He offers to help her. He does. He fulfills that promise. And then now, her and her people were pushed to the brink because of Seki and Komil and because of Peachbeard showing up, and they were motivated and supported by the Revolutionary Army in what they were doing. And now they are given this chance. It would be very interesting to see Moda again the next time we see the Revolutionary Army with her training, with her and the others training, so that way they can learn how to be, combatants, how to, I don't know. Maybe Moda will learn how to fight with a kanabo. Because, like, I don't know, she used stick. Next upgrade to that is kanabo. I don't know, mallet something. I don't know. Would be like a club. We'll give her a club. She can be a caveman. No, she can have like caveman skills or something like that. Give her a club. I don't know, but like show something of them training. We know that the Revolutionary Army have a training program. That's how they train a bunch of their soldiers and stuff like that, and how they, help figure out where areas they're going to be the best in. Are they better at espionage? Are they better at intelligence? Are they better at being the more battlefront side of things? Are they better at this? Are they better at that? And, and we see that, how they work on divvying up who goes where. It would be very nice to see that for Moda and the other people from the Lelucia Kingdom. Also, it would be nice to know if her parents survived. No idea. Find out later. Don't think the cows did, though. That's sad. But, okay. That's what I have here for Moda. It ended up being a little longer than I thought, but that's what we have for Moda. I thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.